Hey, what's up, guys? It's Aspiring Psychiatrist here. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far. So, just jumping right into it, last video I was incredibly critical on a lot of college students for their, kind of lack of respect for the Socratic theory. So, in this video, we're going to be going over something I like to call blood lineage epistemology. And it's like, oh, like, that's a big word. What does that mean? Well, uh, what it means is essentially how you construct logic and rationality within your mind. That is epistemology. And so we're going to be going through some basic concepts of the Socratic method and theory that kind of speaks to how people tend to rationalize or logically kind of deliberate things through kind of their own bloodline as a self-referential point of rationality, more or less. And this isn't to talk down to anyone or to belittle anyone's perspective. And that actually plays into the beauty of the Socratic method. So when someone says, oh, that's a logical fallacy, it's often very contentious and a bit confusing in its use, right? It's like, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that's a logical fallacy? Are you saying that the argument I'm making I can't make? And that's not really it. Logical fallacies in their utility are kind of like red flags, right? All arguments really are tested and refined by their context and by looking at the argument from different perspectives. And so when someone says the argument that you are making is fallacious, it's saying there are certain rules of constructing arguments that this isn't lining up with. It's not a good sign. So for the first one that's very common is appeal to nature. Let's say you have a person who's an atheist or a person who's a Christian, right? The person who's an atheist says, well, I believe being gay is completely fine, right? And also, I believe that being gay is natural. Therefore, you see it in nature. It's an organically occurring event. There's nothing amoral about it. It's like, oh, okay. Well, guess what the Christian can do? Well, the Christian can also say, hey, I think the majority of animals in nature that are male and female are, not homosexual because they need to reproduce, right? Therefore, it's more natural not to be gay because the majority of animals, their goal is reproduction. And it's like, well, big plot twist. That's it's a fallacy. It's a fallacious method of arguing. It makes no logical sense from either perspective, right? Also, there's appeal to genetic, right? You judged whether something is good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it came. What are genetics? Well, if you ever want to look at like a DNA ladder or chain, there's something called nitrogen and nitrogenous bases. Your genetics is just like a code. It's a series of like little nitrogen forms with different letters that form like kind of a almost binary that produces your body, which is more so enzymes, right? Not to be too scientific. And so what a lot of people do is say, well, if I have to survive and if I have to perpetuate my future and sustain my future, the perpetuation of my genetic code through my children is ultimately what serves as my moral compass, right? But the issue is that then everyone simply can use that to justify any kind of moral action that uh, pushes their blood lineage forward and their progeny forward, right? And so using genetics for moral arguments is usually irrational and a bit prideful. That also gets into appeal to authority. This one you'll see a lot in college. It's very sad, I've had professors that were PhDs. I've had professors that were, very intelligent people, but they thought because I have a doctorate or a master's and you don't, I am right and you are wrong because I am an authority on this field of science. And that is not rational. There are times where I've heard people with high school degrees say the most ingenious things I've ever heard in my life. And there's times where I've heard people with PhDs be complete idiots and just say things that make no actual substantial logical sense. And so I don't think it's wise to say, you know, because I got this information from X, I am correct. Therefore, you were wrong on this or that. Why, right? It's not a good idea. It's very circular in nature. And I think what makes an argument good is if it's going somewhere. If you can take an observation and lead with it to a critical point. So how does this relate to blood lineage epistemology? What this big fancy word you're using, Mr. Shrinkman? Well, let's look at the median home prices from 1963 to 2023. What happened here? Well, the baby boomers happened, right? They sat there and said, "Hey, we're having a population explosion. We're going to buy up all the houses that we can," right? And I could see if you want one home, but maybe two or four or six, maybe that's a little bit greedy. I don't know, just with the home prices, right? They want their own place. They want to own their land and have their name to the deed. And that's fine. I think that's a respectable sentiment. But unfortunately, previous generations have bought up the homes. Unless you're willing to live somewhere for 10 to 20 years, I wouldn't say it's usually wise to purchase a house so forthright. But, what's interesting is what happened. Well, here's a map of rental prices, right, from Visual Capitalist. And you'll see in some states like California, you have rent as high as $2,000. In some states like Alabama, the average is about $1,000, right? There's like a variety there. It kind of fluctuates. Different states have different inflation rates. Interesting. But here's kind of the kicker, right? Here's a map of the increase and decrease in rental prices by a website called Abodo. I just pull these up from Google, first thing I find. If anyone wants to critique that, I respect it. But it's so interesting because the states where, some of these states, for those who are watching or listening, some of these states have increased rental prices and some of them have decreased rental prices, with only about one of them on this map having no change at all. And so it's interesting. A home in a highly expensive market, that does not mean that you're going to get a rental property that has an increasing value. The cost of monthly rent does not necessarily increase, but the appreciation of the home, that still has value. So if you own multiple homes, most of the time people want rental tools. They want a passive income. But unfortunately, in a lot of these states, it's not a good idea. It's almost kind of like you're, shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, because if the rental prices are decreasing, why would you want to invest in the home as a source of equity? And so what's so interesting is, well, here's the kicker. I've lived in a lot of different states, and there are some states in this country with an aging population where the young people are leaving, right? And old people, they're not immortal. They're going to die eventually, unfortunately. And so the states where there's old people, an aging population, and not very much going on with people moving there, those states, but big plot twist, because the rental prices in some states have gone down, actually, because the housing market the rental market has been flooded with properties. And so I've lived in some states where it's ridiculous. It's chaotic because you'll see a room that is about $500-600 a month, $700-800, and then you'll see a small house that's like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath home for the same price. You'll see individual rooms in homes, right, that are $1,000 a month for the room, and then you'll see entire apartments for the same price as the singular room in a home, right? So if you know how to play logistics, you can really get a lot of space and comfort for a very small price. So in some ways, it worked actually favorably towards people who are not uber wealthy and not looking to purchase in this market. It's very fascinating. And that pride is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, if I just buy up all the properties, I'll become like the Monopoly guy, and I'll start building, all these big buildings, and I'll be like the lord of the land, so to speak. But that's not always how it works out, especially if you're not willing to leave your state and be open-minded to different cultures. So actually, here's some other numbers just to affirm what I'm saying, so it doesn't come off as disingenuous. Approximately, pardon me, 4 to 5 million existing homes are sold annually in the US as of 2024, a significant decline from 6 million plus in 2021, right? And so we've basically, over the course of from 2021 to 2024, there's been about more than a million less homes that have been sold in the country. And so the demand actually goes down. And so it's very frustrating because a lot of young generation people, they're like, I want to own my house. I want to have my name on the deed. I want it all to be mine, right? Not some other person's. But think of it this way. If you do a down payment of 10, 20, or 30,000, that money is gone. You can sell the home and hopefully get an appreciation value, but you don't have that money anymore. But if you live on a property for 20 years, let's say you're renting a house for 1,500, and the rent price goes down by about 100, over the course of 5 years, you're basically getting the exact same utility of the home for a fraction of the price. And so my advice, this is just me, don't be caught up into all this pride and arrogance of being the lord of the land and who owns the home and whose name is on the big building. Because if you're willing to use logistics to your advantage, you can get the same utility from a home for a fraction of the price by just renting. The market has changed fundamentally. What's so interesting to me is I don't hate the boomers. This is me speaking from my heart. But at the end of the day, if you can get the same home for 40 years for a fraction of the price, why would you just waste tens of thousands of dollars on home repairs and all these other little minute things? So that's my advice. Making decisions from your pride and your bloodline is not usually the best life strategy. Big shocker there.